Hello, everybody. Welcome to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM in beautiful downtown Nanaimo. We are so glad you tuned in today. On today's episode, we're going to turn it to a little bit of a serious note. Even though we're talking about a fictional story, some of the parts of the story could be happening to you in your life. In the Zoom booth with me today is Holly Robinson. She has written a book called No Such Thing as Justice. Welcome to the program, Holly. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. Thanks for taking the time to do this and help me get a little more exposure for my book.
Well, I'm really delighted. The book itself is inspiring and it's challenging and it's heartbreaking and why not tell the audience a little bit about a little bit about the book, what got you to go and do the book, like what made you decide to write such an extraordinary piece?
Well, as you can see behind me,
for those on the Zoom call who are watching this on YouTube, they'll be able to, but on the radio.
But I've kept a diary since I was 11 years old. And so I have many diaries. If I'm standing up, they come up to my shoulders. So it's quite a lot of diaries there stacked up. And so it's always been my intentions to publish them. But of course, I wanted to publish them as fiction and change names and make it just a little easier for everyone that way to, just make it a little better that way, having it a fictional story.
Well, a diary is a very personal piece, generally speaking, right? So it's taken an awful lot of courage for you to put some of this out there for the universe to see, for community to see. Tell us a little bit about your main character.
So the main character is Betty Benson, and where I came up with that name, a lot of people kind of know there's like a skateboard Betty or a snowboard Betty. It's kind of a term for a girl that does skateboard or snowboard, and because I snowboard, I liked the idea of Betty. And then Benson is for Mount Benson, which is in the hometown that I live in. So that's kind of where the name Betty Benson came from. And I liked how it's both, got the matching initials BB. I just thought it was kind of a cool name and I went with it. It was a bit of a challenge to come up with a bunch of fictitious names, but that was kind of a fun thing as well.
I actually really like the name Betty Benson. I think it's a terrific name. It really is.
Thank you.
And so her diary entries, so it's Betty Benson, who's talking about a part of her life that starts somewhere around 2013, I think, is the beginning. And what happens to Betty?
So Betty ends up, this is based on my diaries. And so there's a lot of it that is from my actual diaries right here. And it's my second book, actually, that I've come out with. And I plan to come out with many more from these and keep writing and everything. But this one is it was a challenging one to write. If it wasn't for the COVID lockdown and, having nothing else to do than really focus on it, I don't know if I would have gotten it done by now. It would have been a future kind of thing still I'm working through. It was probably the hardest thing in my life to do, to confront those diaries and relive it and then edit it and decide what to put in the book and what to share and what to make fiction and what to change and what to keep the same. Those are all kind of my own personal things that I don't know if I'll ever really tell anyone the exact truth of what exactly it is. I just kind of keep that to myself. Sure. But it was the most challenging thing to relive that horrible era that I've been trying to just bury and move on from and not look at. But I did want to bring awareness to domestic violence and domestic abuse and relationship abuse. And there's different types of relationship abuse. There's emotional abuse. There's physical abuse. There's all sorts of controlling or jealousy, and abuse can happen by men or women. This
Absolutely.
isn't just, one way. And so, like, I've had people say to me, like, is this book against men? And not at all. Some of my best friends are men. I love men. I have no problem with men at all. And I've talked to some men friends who go through similar things as Betty Benson, but on the opposite scale. Totally. Where they have a really difficult ex that's a female. Exactly. And then they have to navigate through the judicial system. And that's where Betty Benson gets a really rude awakening to what's really going on in our judicial system, which is something I had no idea of. I was so naive to it before this. I thought we had justice in Canada. I totally thought we had justice and it was a justice system, but I was corrected.
Yeah. Yeah, our justice system, much like our racism issues, are very much different. They're much more alive than we think that they are. It's rather incredible, actually, the way the system is. And
I want to bring awareness to it.
Yeah.
Because all too often, a low-income single mother going through what I'm going through has no voice.
Absolutely.
And I've seen women like me and men like me going through this. I've seen them at the courtroom or just out in public and told them about my book. And most of them are just so happy I've written this book and so happy I'm doing this, because it's not right how the judicial system seems to care more about making money than actually helping families. And that's not right.
No,
to
I
me.
agree.
Like, it should cost me $10,000 to have a lie detector test to prove the abuse. And then if I even wanted to do that, it wouldn't be submissible in court. But it is submissible if it is a case that has to do with murder, but not with domestic violence. So and with custody battles. And so there's things that need to be changed. And I'm not the first one to say this. This is all over the internet.
Absolutely.
It's not just me coming up with it.
Well, and it's within the social services and any of the abuse organizations in the community that have worked hard to try to make some changes in our legislation. But unfortunately, and abuse is it's insidious, because most of the time, like Betty, it's happening behind closed doors. And when you go to someone, even someone that you love very, very much, and you try to share your experience with them, it's taken very lightly rather than actually being looked into as being serious. Because, in some cases, not all, in some cases, the guy or the gal, they're like the nicest people on the planet. Like, how could you, on the outside, you would never imagine that they would behave this way behind closed doors. Never imagine.
Quite often. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Quite often they're narcissistic, and it is that quality trait that they have, that they actually pour on the charm in public. And then they do have a very alternate state that they let out in front of people they think they can get away with it with.
Yeah.
And so in Betty's case, the abuse was there, and she, looking back, I think you can see the red flags right from the beginning of the book.
Yes.
But it takes Betty longer to compute it all and to get it straight and to figure it out. But definitely you can see it escalate, and you can see the villain in the book know when to be more malicious and know when to be nice and sorry and it'll never happen again, and then know when to be again malicious and then know when to back off. And it's a game that they play. And so with Betty, when she becomes pregnant, that's when her partner in the book really gets a lot more troublesome with the abuse, and it just gets worse and escalates and escalates and escalates until it's to the point where Betty can no longer ignore it. I don't know how far you've gotten in the book. I don't want to.
Well, hey, listen, I think that there's some incredible elements to this book. I'm going to, throughout the book, I'm just going to, or throughout the radio program, I'm just going to touch on some of the pieces, some of the highlights. This book not only has the diary entries, but it also has there's some little filtering, some little dustings of this incredible poetry that you've written. And so the first poem I want to share, if it's okay with you, is Believe in Magic. So this is in the very beginning, right? In the beginning of her narcissistic abuse, in the beginning of her abusive relationship, however that is labeled as such. Yeah. She starts off with believe in magic and believe in miracles because anything can happen in the blink of an eye. Believe I'm magic because everyone has it, and believe in miracles because they are real in the world. Anything can happen. Any dream can come true. In life, you're the ship's captain and now take control and cruise. Everything is meant to be. The future is unforeseen, but always sent to be and always meant to be. What was Betty thinking as she was reflecting on that poem?
I think a lot of us, especially with this kind of new age trend, we're told to think positive. And so it's been so long since I've looked at that one. I can't exactly totally remember where I was going with it. But I think what it is the importance of staying positive no matter what. And the importance of believing in your dreams coming true in order to help manifest them. And also, whatever happens is meant to be. Whatever will be, will be. It's funny, today's my grandma Ann's birthday, and she used to always say that because it was like a song, whatever will be, will be. And
very popular song.
That's kind of the whole idea of whatever's meant to be, will be. And it's sometimes really hard because it's like, what? I was meant to go through all that? Like, like nobody likes to think of that side of it, but maybe we are meant to grow from the things we go through. And maybe it's okay that life is this journey of ups and downs, and some of it's so horrible we don't want to remember, but that's okay. That's part of the journey. And the amount that we grow from those down times makes us the wonderful people that we are in the high times. So you have to just somehow embrace that.
Just before we came on to tape this fabulous Zoom radio show, as we're not yet in the booth at CHLY, some people are, I'm not there yet. Having said that, one of the things that we were talking about offline was how easy it is for people to fall into abuse without even realizing that they've fallen into it. I mean, you and I are both incredibly strong women. We have, we have great careers, we have things pushed ahead, and yet both of us have identified with Betty in this way. And so, I wonder, what would you say to that person who doesn't realize where she is and the acceptance of it's okay to have been there?
It's really hard to accept that you are in an abusive relationship because the abuse is often done in a way to confuse the survivor of it. It is done in a way to make their brain think, oh, well, maybe it's me. Maybe it's not that bad, because they constantly kind of get into your head. You would never guess that that would happen to someone like me. I had a sports show for years where I would win most of the sports against my co-hosts. And I think of myself as a very strong person. I coach my ball team. I'm a great ball player, an athlete, and a snowboarder. Like, I think of myself as such a strong person and athlete, but when you your persona that you have to the outside world, and then when you're in a relationship, sometimes that can be different. And so unfortunately, I'm a bit of a doormat in relationships, and it's a horrible trait of mine. And so I can't be with someone who overtakes, because it'll just is not a good idea. Whereas if if you're in the right relationship, then that wouldn't happen. But for me, I was just too giving, too understanding, too gullible, too believing. Oh, he really wants to change. Oh, he promises he loves me, and just wanting to believe all that. And the abuse just got like little bit more and more. And part of the abuse is when they do try to isolate you, and that definitely happened where I was very isolated, and that made it kind of snowball. And so it can happen to even the strongest person, that you all of a sudden end up in one of these relationships, and it can be extremely hard to understand it. And where I got my strength was reading books about it And that helped me understand it more and understand the mental abuse side of it and the emotional abuse side of it. It was easy for my brain to comprehend when he put a knife to my throat. I should not marry this person. Yeah. That was when my brain said, okay, you cannot, like, I think I'd seen enough movies about or whatever where I was like, I can't marry this person. He might kill me. I might not live through it if I stay with him. Like it came to this turning point where I was like, he really might kill me. You know, he was so drunk, he was stumbling, and we weren't fighting or anything. He just was trying to play a weird head game with me. And so he got the biggest knife in the kitchen and held it to my throat.
Oh my gosh.
And I will forever remember the exact spot where he held that. Yeah. I will never in my life forget it. And that's something I have to live with for the rest of my life. Yeah. And nobody has cared to help me get justice for it. Nobody has helped me at all. He was so drunk one time, he was threatening to punch me in the face. I had my baby, I'm crying, the baby's crying. I'm considering running to maybe a neighbor's house. Sorry, it's really hard to talk about.
I feel
it was just horrible abuse. And then to find out that there's no justice system when I want to leave and I want to get justice and I want to stop him. And then there's no justice for me. And then it's really hard to get your child away from this abusive person. And then I've spent about $25,000 in legal fees trying to keep my son safe. Yeah. And I still can't. And it's so upsetting to me. It has given me sleepless nights. It has completely changed my soul. Like, it just hurts so much that nobody has helped me. Nobody has given me justice. And when I've tried to go to the police and go to the lawyers and go to the judges and go to everyone I'm supposed to go to, there is no justice. And that broke my heart and that angered me. And that is why I wrote this book.
Yeah. No justice. No such thing as
justice. Because it needs to be told, because I'm not the only one that this happens to.
No, absolutely.
And a lot of people can't even afford the legal fees I've paid. I've paid every last penny trying to fight this and trying to get justice. And you know what? The only time I felt better is when I finally published the book, because I feel like that's the only justice I'm going to get. I'm never going to get it from the judicial system. It's not made for that. They don't care about domestic violence. That's a sad reality that we have to live with. Even though you go to the courtroom, there's a plaque behind every judge that says, my country, my people, my God, my justice. It's in a different language, but that's what it says. And they don't even know that. They don't even care about that. Yeah. Like, where's the justice in Canada? This is not right. And so that is why I published my book. And it is really hard to be the face and the voice of domestic violence. I don't want to be that at all. Yeah. But somebody has to make this aware to the average people that this is what's going on. You can spend tens of thousands of dollars. I've heard of people spending millions of dollars in these legal battles. And so the lawyers just make all this money. And what happens to the people? They don't get justice. They don't keep their kids safe. No. My son cries about not wanting to go to his dad's all the time, and there's nothing I can do about it. No. I can spend tens of thousands of dollars and I can't save him. Even though my ex admitted in court to emotionally abusing me, as well as verbally abusing me, he did not admit to the physical abuse, because then of course he would be charged in that.
Of course.
But it's like, so someone can admit that in court and then still get part custody of a child that begs to not go to him? I know. It just doesn't make sense to me.
There's something so severely wrong with that picture. But what's worse is that when the parent, whether it's male or female, It's when they use the children as the tool, and then they start abusing again, but in a different way, if that makes any sense, right?
Yes.
I know in my experience, when I left my abusive relationship, it took me years to have a relationship with my son again. My son didn't trust me, even though it was because I hid everything so that no child should see their mother go through that.
Yeah.
If you just tuned in, you are listening to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. I'm taking a breath because my guest with me also needs a breath. We both
Thank you.
It's not an easy discussion. It is a difficult thing in our communities. It's happening insidiously throughout our country, throughout all countries of the world, and in some countries certainly worse than others. Holly Robinson has written a book called No Such Thing as Justice. It is a diary of a woman by the name of Betty Benson. I was going to call her Bunsen by accident, but again, okay, see, everybody who does my show and knows my show, Betty, welcome to the club. They know I screw up names. It's part of my training. I do it on television, and I do it on, I do it on my radio show. I'm going to jump to another poem that you wrote, although this is not a book of poetry by any way, but there are some pieces that she keeps trying to endure. She keeps pushing herself forward in the midst of some really horrific abuse and really difficult challenges as she's facing her pregnancy, as she's given birth and she's raising her child virtually alone because she's dealing with so much trauma. And yet she still says, life is so full of bliss. I don't know if it could get better than this. I got my top dream off my list, this moment I couldn't have missed. Meeting my son for the first time, looking at him, hearing him cry. Something inside of me melts. Pure love is all I felt. The most beautiful sight to be seen. Our perfect little son had come to be, joining us into one for all eternity. God's gift given to me. Stumble as we may, together every day. And just saying it, I'm moved because
Thank you.
And as your children grow, my son's 30 now and he's giving me grandchildren, and he seems to be, in denial that a lot of this happened, and that's his coping mechanism. And so, it's probably a bit of an overshare for radio and YouTube, but it's amazing that people, because we're all connected in this way as moms, right? We go through, I remember, I'm the best patch maker ever. So for example, my walls used to get punched a lot, and at school, or, he'd be a whatever. And so, so if something would happen and I would have that patched, fixed, hidden, done, complete, repainted before anybody knew what was happening, even if the paint was wet, even if the drywall wasn't quite set, because I didn't want him to know what had gone on. Yeah, I didn't want him to see it. And I think, and I used to paint and paint and paint. So I must have painted my house in those days, and I'm long out of it. However, that's another story in itself, because even when you leave abuse, it still comes to you in your dreams. It doesn't ever really go away. There's always that, tuck, duck, what's going to happen next. But as I, kind of go back onto it, looking back and thinking of those days, those times, and the tragedy and the trauma and the silence and the tears, and just never wanting him to know, never wanting my friends to know, never wanting anybody to know, because it would be like, I'm a smart woman. How the hell could I have found myself in this situation? I am no freaking dummy. How the blankety blank, blank, blank did I end up in this blankety blank situation, right?
You all of a sudden look around and it's like you're in a horror movie. Yes. And you're in a scene that you never thought you would be in a scene of. And it's almost like you're disassociated or something. Like, it's like, totally, how could this even be happening? So I don't think I'll ever end up there again. And I think that one thing I'd like to do with this book is to bring awareness to people that of any age that are maybe in a relationship that is on that gradual slope the wrong way, you know? And so it's not okay for someone to be calling you names, even if it's a joke. It's really a red flag and a warning sign. You should not be with that person right there. That, like, you know, it's one thing to joke around, but it's another thing when they're belittling and demeaning. Absolutely. And constant and the play fighting, like I've never been one to want to play fight. And so that was kind of like always coming up and getting more and more aggressive until it got like really bad. And always jokes about, oh, I'm going to punch you in the face. Well, then it turned into wanting to punch me in the face. And this is someone who I had heard about his previous relationship abuse, but he had talked his way through it. There was a girl, I won't say her name, but he dated someone who said that he punched her in the face. And that's what he was threatening to do to me one night. Like, that's his thing, I guess. And so he did punch her in the face, and apparently she phoned guys over to come beat him up. And then he phoned the cops to kind of like come and save him from these guys and this beating. And I don't really know, but they broke up over it. He kind of said, no, she was drunk and passed out, and I didn't do that. And then there was an incident where he was in on a dance floor with a bunch of friends, and he put a girl in a headlock. And his friends had to come and intervene. And that was a weird one. And he's like, they were just thinking, and I wasn't doing anything, talked his way through that one. There was also an incident where, you know how there's punching machines in a bar?
Yeah.
So apparently there was a girl standing near a punching machine, and he punched her in the face. Oddly enough, punched another girl in the face. Oh, it was a mistake. It was a mistake. And then even a family member of his was going through a divorce, and that person brought up the fact that she was scared of him when he drinks. So like, I'm not the first woman to accuse him of this. And I'm sure he's still coming up with lots of excuses why all these women are claiming this. But, you know, that's between him and his family, and I don't have anything to do with any of them. I just have a huge family and a huge group of friends and a huge amount of support from the people I know. And I stay far away from him. And I've finally gotten to the point where he's not allowed within 100 meters of me unless he is dropping off my son. Or, but so that's a good point. Like, it's finally, you know, at that point where I feel a little safer, because he was stalking me recently, and that was not fun.
No.
So yeah, it's just been nonstop. And not only stalking me, but he keeps on phoning social services and cops on me. So I've had 2 social service workers at my house. I've had 2 RCMP members at my house. I have obviously passed all of these, and they have been very nice to me, and it just makes him look bad. And he has called in so many times that they don't even notify me about it, and they just deem them as malicious. So hopefully soon someone will be able to stop all the legal abuse that I've been through. But honestly, I feel like the judicial system
doesn't still walking on eggshells, right? At the end of the day, you're still walking on eggshells. You're even though, and how long has it been since you resided together, or you were in the same, under the same, or were you ever under the same roof?
I moved back into my mom's house where I live now in 2014. So it's been a very long
time. Yeah, that's like what, 6, 8 years, something like that.
Well, it's it's about 6 years now. And so when somebody like that, 6.5, but when someone like that gets their hooks in you, they don't want to just let you go so easy. They want to keep I almost feel like he is obsessed with harassing me and tormenting me, and like, I sometimes wonder if he'll ever stop. I lock my doors constantly. I only feel safe when like all my doors are locked, and my bedroom's door's locked as well. Even then, I don't really feel that safe. And that's something that I just kind of cope with. And I have things that I try to do to calm myself, like maybe a hot bath, a warm cup of tea. Playing guitar really helps me a lot to get my mind onto something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
that must
you just
be very
have to
frightening
build
for
your
you,
life.
though. That must be very frightening for you, though, to still, after 6 years at your mother's house, trying to create a safety net and still have to kind of bounce about. So, having a cup of tea and a hot bath, may help in one thing. I know the justice isn't going to come in that way, not yet. But I'm like, I always think of this abusive situation to be much that of an octopus. So you just, they've got their tentacles on you. You just cut one tentacle off, but then the next one comes around and grabs you by a different way. Another tentacle comes, you cut that off, and then you still have all of those. Eventually, you'll come to a place where they'll all be gone, right? The tentacles will be gone. However, there's still, like, I have a belief system that you just can't feed them, right? There's a part of the narcissist, the part of the abusive personality that you just can't feed them, because the minute you do, it's like, and you're in a bad situation, respectfully, because of the child, right? Your kids, right? Or your baby has to go with him because he has parental rights. Mm-hmm. How are you navigating that distance? How are you cutting off that tentacle and moving forward? Besides, obviously, this fantastic book, right? No Such Thing as Justice.
The book has helped a lot that way for me.
Yeah.
And spiritually, it's helped a lot that way. Mm-hmm. And then keeping busy. So playing sports, hanging out with friends that make me feel good, hanging out with family. Those are all kind of positive things to do with my time. I really, like I say, enjoy guitar and that. But mainly I have to kind of try to sometimes put it on a shelf. There's some weeks when I have court coming up and I'm dealing with lawyers and everything that I am not in the mood to really hang out with anyone. I'm not really in the mood to talk to anyone. I just want to be locked in my room and locked in my house, and I don't want to be bothered by anyone because it's too much for me.
Totally.
But I try to put that on the shelf and not have it be a part of my life on the everyday. Because I think it was about like the first 2 years that I was going through all this court stuff, I kind of just realized that it had been 2 years that I had just been on edge and put everything else off and like let it totally rule my life. And I thought, well, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep ruining camping trips and ruining fun times. I have to try to have fun and not deal with that all the time, just for my own mental sanity. And it is so hard to think about, and worry about my son and navigate through all this. But I'm just doing the best. I think the book has like been the best therapy. I recommend to anybody going through any relationship troubles to do a bit of a diary, because it's something you can look back on and reflect on, and you'll remember things that you would have ordinarily not remembered.
Oh, and absolutely.
So it's therapeutic. And I mean, it's important too, though, that you feel like no one's going to read it. Like you feel like it's
hard to turn it into a book.
Yeah. I mean, only a crazy person would actually publish the diaries. Who would do that?
No, I don't think so. I think a very intuitive and intelligent woman has made a brilliant decision to help others. And I'm going to go straight to the helping others part of it with this. Friday, December the 29th, 2017. I'm reading an excerpt from her book. I'm watching a documentary on psychopaths and how to spot them, and Dick is everything on the list. I found the name Dick to be just brilliant, by the way. I'm sorry that I did. I loved it. He always brags about him being crazy as a loon. Why would you be proud of that? Impulsively money, drinking, gambling problems. Impulsivity. No empathy, can't feel it. Grandiose, a big sense of self-worth. Need for stimulation, could never sit at home quietly. Sex addict, often talk about being the best, but not performing well. Many short-term marital type relationships, they quickly progress to wanting to see a lot of each other. Failure to accept responsibility, irresponsible, lives off others, yup. Bored easy, superficial charm, pathological lying, manipulative, no remorse or guilt, shallow, poor behavioral control, lack of realistic long-term goals, telling stories nonstop to be the center of the party, good at charming people, controlling. They mess with your mind. They switch things to say it's your fault and are never sorry. Cheaters, massive ego and brag about sexual exploits. Won't like you going out with your friends and they try to isolate you. Alcoholic or dangerous drinking levels. It can be a genetic disorder or brought on by childhood trauma. It's good to study who I'm up against. I'm pretty convinced he's a psychopath. They move around a lot because people start to figure them out. And
I think
wow.
education is the best thing to help you get out of an abusive relationship, because a lot of the times part of the abuse is making you unsure if it is abuse, and they try to turn it around.
Huge part.
All your fault. The whole gaslighting thing as well. There's so much to it, and there's so much all over the internet. There's so many books in the libraries on it. So people really should, if they have even the slightest thought that they might be in a relationship that's not healthy for them, they should educate themselves about it. And they should try to get some clarity there, and maybe even see a counselor. I know when I saw a counselor, when I first left my ex-partner, it really did help me feel like I was doing the right thing and help me get clarity in my mind about all the abuse that I've been through. And I had the hardest time with the idea that I was a victim of domestic violence.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be a
How did you
victim.
process that? I understand it completely. I had the same experience. How did you process it?
I didn't want anyone to know. I was really shy and embarrassed about it. And then my counselor told me, he said, you know, the victims go out in a body bag. You're a survivor of domestic violence. Yeah. And that really, so now I look at it like I'm a survivor. And I switched my brain from that horrible, I don't want to be a victim and I don't want to associate with that, to this, I'm a survivor. It still is something that I hate talking about. I'm having a hard time, you know, but I'm pushing through it because there's this artist in me that really wants to bring awareness to this topic. And I just, as an artist, you're always taught to be brave, be bold, and to push yourself beyond the ego. And so I can't care what people think about Betty Benson's diaries and what they may judge me for. If I do that, then I'm sunk. I may as well not publish it.
Well, and you're also contributing to your own abuse. I mean, you've walked away from the abuse. The last thing that you need is for somebody else to come along and dictate their two bits about something that is your personal artwork, your personal experience. I'm not a big fan. I mean, don't get me wrong. Everybody experiences abuse differently. And the way that they see themselves as a consequence of abuse is very different from person to person. But there are a few things that are really, really common among survivors. Being what Betty Benson has gone through, that fight, that drive to seek justice, even though justice might not be through the courts, justice might be through karma, right? You've got a beautiful closing about karma that you talk about at the end of the book. And I'm going to go there, but I don't want to go there yet because I think it's too early to go near far to the end of the book.
Right.
The reality is that, as each individual processes this isn't a story of, oh my goodness, poor me. Rather, this is a story to say, I'm walking alongside you because the chances are really freaking high. 1 in 3 women, right, are abused, either sexually assaulted or have an abusive environment around them. And we can completely look at this and say, oh no, that's not true. That's not true. Well, why does your husband, and I'm going to use profanity on this program, which this is local community radio. These are common words that people use. But if your husband is calling you a bitch because you didn't grab something at the grocery store that he wanted, I'm sorry, but that's just unacceptable behavior. And when you tell them that and they say, well, what's your problem? You are a bitch. Then I think that's a flag, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
then Oh, or if they bring you roses constantly or bring you flowers right after, as you pointed out earlier, they've been belittling you the entire week over something that they think that they could have done better or should have done better, or the idea that you might have wanted to go out with the girlfriends. Or for men, by the way, I really do feel sorry for men. And I do want to throw men out there, because there are a lot of men that are abused by women because they have been abused themselves, or they may come from a different, or maybe they just are not kind people, right? Personness has no gender, right? So, right. But there are a lot of men there that go out there and they work their pajushkas off, right? And they build homes for their families, right? They're great dads. They work hard for their family. And then the woman doesn't like something they does. And so they take everything, they divorce them and take everything. Right? So yes. They're left to start all over again. And sometimes they're not good at relationships, and they're doing it 2 or 3 times. In all fairness, unless you work on your stuff, it will perpetuate. It will move forward with you. You mentioned counseling a little bit ago. You do need help with this. I'm sorry. I don't think that people can get away with it without having some support somehow.
I think it's important to definitely educate yourselves. And the bonus of going to a professional therapist or counselor, I think, is that it validates it for you and for your mind. And because your mind has gone through so much time of not knowing what's the real abuse and what isn't, and how do we define it, it's a great way to get a definition of that from someone that your mind says, oh, this is a professional, so I'm going to accept what they're saying. They spent years in university, deciphering the mind and that. So I'm going to trust what they're saying. And so for me, that was a big turning point. I didn't question myself as much after I went. And I think it's important. And I'm continuing to watch videos on YouTube about self-help and self-love. I think loving yourself is a huge one. And that's something that lately I've been really kind of playing with. And, how they say, like, you look in the mirror and you say, I love you, you're wonderful. And I've seen a million videos about it. There was even that old Saturday Night Live comedy sketch about it. But how many of us actually do it, right? We don't do it. And I think we should, and gosh darn it, I love you. That's
right. Yeah, it's Stuart Smalley, and it's like he looks in the mirror and he says, "I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and God darn it, people like me."
There you go.
I love that whole sketch. I think it's really brilliant.
It is. There's so many people that we say that we love ourselves and that, but how often do we actually praise ourselves and actually look in the mirror and say, I do love you, I appreciate you. Instead, I think we often say, no, I can do that. I can do that too. I can push myself. I can do that. And I can do that. And I can do that. And we keep busy. And we don't often go into the darker side of our memories and all that. And maybe look at like, hey, I do need to work on this self-love thing. That's a hard thing to admit for anyone.
It really is. By the way, if you've just you've tuned into Act 3 on CHLY 101.7, where our guest is Holly Robinson. She is an incredible author writing a book called No Such Thing as Justice, based on the diaries of Betty Benson. And by the way, our other 2 guests are Bobby Wilson and Kevin. So bless their little hearts. They will be a little bit kinder here in just a moment. If wishes could kill, you would be dead. Oh, if wishes could heal, the pain be out of my head. But wishes are just wishes, and dreams are just dream. People, they be bitches and faker than they seem. Life can bring you to your knees, and life can float you up on a breeze. Life's a spectrum of emotions, some happy, some make you bleed. Crazy people try to bring you down. Sad people like your sad frown. But that's just their bad energy. What they see, you don't have to see. Some people want to beat you down and never let you get up. Those people will get what comes around. It's safe for you to speak up. But you can't keep a good woman down. You can try, but you'll watch her fly. She's stronger than you'll ever be. She's strong from within and never did any sin. She is stronger than you'll ever be. What is Betty thinking as she is pushing forward moment by moment with self-love and trying to find and regain her identity after a long time of pushing through this difficult time in her life? What is she doing? What's happening for Betty?
I think Betty is continuing to grow, and definitely in future books to come, there's going to be a lot of other relationships that you'll hear of. This book mainly deals with that one relationship and that idea of no such thing as justice. And so that's what this book goes on. But there's many other books coming out, and you will see Betty as she navigates looking for maybe a new partner and all the fears that go along with that and all the ups and downs on that journey. And so that will be a new book coming out. But I think the next book that will be released will actually be back in time.
So before this experience.
Yes.
Wow.
So the first book, this is the first book written. It's called No Such Thing as Secrets. And so this one starts way back when Betty Benson turns 11 and she gets her first diary from her sister. And it goes all the way until 2003. So from 2003 to when this one starts in 2012. So there's one or two books in between these two that will be the next project that I most likely work on. This one, I'm going to get it re-edited before it is re-released.
So No Such Thing as Secrets is not going to be re-released until you've done a new edit to it.
Yes.
And how, by the way, how do people get either of your books? Are they on Amazon? Or are they at the bookstore? Like, how do people actually get your books?
They are on multiple online sources. Friesen Press. So friesenpress.com is who I self-published my book through. And so it's available that way. They could also reach out to me on social media, and I can make sure I could drop a book off for them or get it mailed to them or help them find it online, depending on where they are. So my name for Instagram and Snapchat is Snowboard Diva, one word, one D. And so that one, and then Holly Robinson on Facebook. And so any of those ways, and then also I work at Miller's Pub and I have books available there. I have them available for $25. And so you could always go into Miller's Pub and get one there as well.
That's fantastic. I love Miller's Pub. I'm glad it's open again. That's really good news.
Yes.
I haven't been to Miller's in ages. I used to go all the time.
Yes, I love the food. I've been eating there for many years.
Yeah, Miller's.
And working there many years. It's my home away from home, and it's been such a big support to me. All the people that I work with and work for, as well as the customers, are like my second family, and they have been so important on the self-love journey, because I couldn't tell you how often I get told at work that I'm beautiful and that they love me, and just nice positive comments. And it's just been so important on my journey to have that support. So and it's great that they're helping me now, letting me sell my book while I'm at work and out of the pub. It's awesome.
Well, and I love that she has a series. I think that, knowing that Betty has more to say. How does Betty feel about dating now? Does she still look over her shoulder? Is she like, how is she looking at the whole process of dating?
Betty is, it's so funny. Like what I'm writing right now, like handwriting now. So Betty is embarking on this new age dating era, where a lot of it
online
is
type stuff,
and it is so much harder to navigate them before, and it's just a weird thing. And so there's lots of really funny moments as Betty kind of stumbles along trying to find her Mr. Right. Finding a Mr. Right is it's quite a funny thing. And so I see the future books being quite more humorous.
I'm so glad. Life changes when you leave, right? It really does get better. It takes sometimes a long time.
And it's really hard to see. And like, I have people that I know, and you know, I don't know enough details, but I can kind of guess maybe they're not in a healthy relationship, and I'll try to kind of talk to them about it. But a lot of the times people don't want to talk about how bad it is. And so, you know, I just encourage anyone that's going through it to talk to someone about it, even if it's a counselor, you know, if it's a friend, if it's a diary, talk about it and try to make sense of it and educate yourself on what the red flags are and what actual, you know, abuse is. Because some people, even like what I didn't know before I kind of looked into it, is when someone's always like, oh, if you leave me, I'm going to kill myself. That's a definite sign of abuse. That's a definite sign. And so there's so many other signs, you know, the making fun of, the play fighting, getting rougher and rougher, the threats of harm, making fun of you in front of the groups. You did a great job reading what you read about all the different signs that people should look for. And there's lots on the internet of information for people. I guess my main thing is, bringing awareness to it so that people can get a healthier life. And I do want to say that it is a happy ending for Betty, because she gets stronger as time goes on and as the book goes. And as it is hard to read some of it, it was really hard to write some of it, agonizing some of it. But
I love that it was a healing journey for you to go through.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump towards as we go through this. Now, there is some stuff about the legal harassment. There's some stuff that, you know, like you really have to get the book to explore it. But I love parts of the closing conversation. And so it is part where you're ending. And there's a beautiful, for those of you that are going to get the book, because we know that you're going to have like an onslaught of people that want this book. There's a tremendously beautiful picture of you in this piece.
Thank you.
It's just stunning, absolutely stunning. You're a very stunning woman. I know radio can't really hear that or see that, but trust me.
Thank you. My sister, I'll give a shout out to Kelly Adam Photography, who did that.
Oh, I know.
She did all my pictures.
Yeah, Kelly Adam is absolutely amazing to this. So here's the thing. I suddenly my house is full. So if there's any background and such, please just ignore it. This is part of the Zoom conversation. If my dogs begin to bark, hopefully they will be kind and they won't, but they will be what they are. You say, I would like to take a moment and end this with a quick story about karma. I once met a man who told me a very personal story about karma, and it has sat with me for many years. He was in a gang and living in a dangerous life, and actually died in an ambulance for a few minutes after being brutally attacked by a rival gang member. He told me that he had seen his whole life pass before his eyes. I asked him if it was just the highlights of snippets, and he told me no. Every second of it, every emotion, every smell, every minute of his whole life passed before him. He said at the end, he saw where his life was going and he saw where his life could go, and he understood karma. He was relieved and decided to leave the gang world behind and told his gang friends not to retaliate on that other guy who'd hurt him so bad. He said he wanted to put it in God's hands and understood karma and wanted to leave it be. His gang members respected his decision, and within a year, that guy was in a bad car accident and became quadriplegic. And that was thought to be his karma for the pain he had caused. And you say, or I'm sorry, Betty says, I believe in karma and I believe in God, and I believe that our whole life gets watched over by our angels and God and ourselves at the end, and that no one gets away with anything in the spiritual realm. I have faith that we all get our justice once we get to our next destination. And I was so moved by that piece, knowing that, like you, I believe very much in karma. What does Betty think that karma, what do you feel karma will look like in a peaceful way for you moving forward? What would you like if you cannot get the system through the courts? What might that look like?
For me, I obviously would love to grant my son's wish of spending more time with me and less time with his dad, but that's kind of beyond my control. I can do the best I can do, and whatever happens, happens. So for me, getting my book out there and having people read my story is the karma that hopefully will come. Because for me, I would feel like I acknowledged everything that I had been through in my past relationship. And it's important that I acknowledge that in order to feel my sense of justice, and not be silenced, and not just be like, shut up, who cares, move on.
Absolutely.
You know, because it is like just a bunch of legalities and that don't actually help people. They just make money for the judicial system. It's awful, really.
Well,
it's unfortunate. There's a lot of good lawyers out there too.
There's
good and bad in every profession. I'm hoping maybe someone will read my book and be able to help me. Maybe they'll say, hey, I can help you. Like, you know, which parts of these are you going through? Blah, blah, blah. You never know. But just the whole act of me publishing this book and people reading it and people hearing Betty Benson's story, and that is what will heal my heart. Like, and I did that for me. That was something that I did for me. And I guess at the end of the day, everything is a self journey. And so this was a self journey, a self-love, an acknowledgement to myself. And I wrote it for me. I hope it has success, but I didn't write it for that reason. I wrote it for the therapeutic value and the justice of it, that I wanted to feel, and the acknowledgement that I wanted to have for myself of going through this, and help myself put it to rest a bit. And it has. It's really helped a lot.
I'm sure.
It's still hard to talk about. People bring it up to me and I'll be like, oh yeah, the book. And it is, I'm glad we had a long time to talk about it, because it is such a big thing. It's not. And so I kind of have my short version, which is, I've kept a diary since I was 11 years old, and it's a chunk of that.
Yeah.
That's kind of my short version statement of what the book is about. And there's going to be many more books to come. It's my passion. It's my lifelong mission. And if I ever die, someone else better do it. They all must be published.
Well, maybe your sister Kelly will, for sure. And certainly her photography is absolutely extraordinary. And the book does have a few slides in it that are just really quite beautiful.
Yes, thank you. I enjoyed doing the poetry. I always like to write lyrics for songs, and a lot of these poems have kind of a melody in my head as well.
Well, I look forward to reading more and hearing more and seeing more of what Betty's going to do. You know, we're coming to the end of the program. I can't believe that our hour has already been and gone. It's like, oh my gosh. And I still don't think that there's enough time. There's way more that I know that we can break open. I do want to do a shout out to Haven Society. Yes. I will make sure that when we post this on YouTube, if you're watching it on YouTube and not listening to it live on CHLY 101.7 FM, I will be sure to make sure that there's a link down below for Haven Society. If you are going through domestic violence, please reach out to the professionals. They know how to support you. They're extraordinary. I just outstanding, period.
There's also, there's always a lot of good charities that people could donate to, like you say,
absolutely.
The Society, different shelters in town.
Yes,
yeah.
As we're closing the program, though, because I do want to make sure people hear your final pieces of wisdom, because it has been a really, really beautiful story to witness, to read. Even though I'm not all the way through it, I've taken a few snippets. I've shared a few snippets on the program for you, but I have to say there's just so much more meat to this book. The book itself, again, is called No Such Thing as Justice. It's written by Holly A.J. Robinson. And you can get your copy either directly from her by her social media platforms, or if you pop into the pub, you can see her live and talk to her. Maybe she'll even sign a book for you. I don't know if that's pushing it too far. If she goes to for sure would be grand. It's definitely worth the read. as we close out, and we will put your contact and your Facebook information out there. As we close out though, I always like to ask my guests, you know, if you could imbibe on our community, members of our city who, or province or country, or, you know, anybody who's listening, however this is being viewed. And this is an incredible opportunity for a teachable moment, right? Where we can share with community your insights, your wisdom. What would you want people to know? What would you want to be sure people understood and heard about your story, about Betty, about your book, about the journey?
I guess the main thing I would like to say is, if you do think you are in an unhealthy relationship, please do your best to educate yourself, seek help, and possibly get out. That might be, you know, the best thing to do. I don't know your personal relationship, but it's important for everybody to really take that time to look at it, reflect on it, and see how damaging it is, and outweigh the good times and the bad times, and see which ones are. Abuse definitely has sneaky ways about it. People are not always abusive every day and in a way that would just make you run for the door. It's often very discreet, very hidden, and a little harder to predict and to understand. It can escalate to where it is quite obvious, and you know it's time to leave before you end up not being able to leave at all. And unfortunately, like you say, this happens to all too many people. It can be men and women. And so it's important to just live a healthy life, live a life that you love, and try to love yourself and stay healthy, live a good life. And don't feel bad about leaving someone that has been horrible to you, because it's the best thing for you. Hopefully you don't have children. If you have children and you're going through a custody battle, my heart goes out to you, men and women. I know I have a friend who's a man, and his ex and her new partner have way more money and they can afford way more lawyer bills than him. And so it turns into this fight of who can afford more lawyer bills, and it shouldn't be like that. That's not what justice is. And so my heart goes out to anybody who's going through a horrible custody battle or who is in a horrible relationship. I really have a new compassion for anybody going through it that I didn't understand before. And so my heart goes out to them, and just stay positive and keep striving for what you know is right, and keep documenting everything.
I'm going to close out, if it's okay with you, by Betty's November 4th, 2019 reading. And she says, in a poem, and it has to do with a nephew who was in a terrible car accident. I know that's a little bit off, but it's part of the whole big picture of all of it, which is what I really value in this piece of poetry written by yourself, AKA Betty Benson. And it says, God is near you, lending his ear to you, closer than you think and right on time. He's full of laughter and happily ever afters, bestowing on you his gracious divine, helping you when you need it, holding you and you feel it, watching you grow one day at a time. I hope we get to watch, listen, and hear an awful lot more about Betty Benson's journey, about the things that she's doing in future, about the little space between 2003 and 2012, or however it is jived. Let's tell our listeners one more time how they can actually find you, or how they can get a hold of your book. Again, your book is called No Such Thing as Justice, written by Holly Robinson.
Yes, they can go to friesenpress.com and they can look up that title or my author name and find it that way. They can go on Facebook and look up Holly Robinson. Instagram or Snapchat, it is Snowboard Diva, one word, 1D.
Perfect. Thank you so very, very much for being on the program today. I'm really, really glad that you were able to spend the time exploring your fabulous book. I look forward to having you on the program again. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for us on this week's episode of Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM.